So I was perusing social media the other day, as I am wont to do in my downtime, and I happened upon an interesting discussion. And that discussion was in the realm of politics and government. And the topic was, what if the southern states were their own country? How would they rank economically? And a few people were weighing in and essentially saying that if the southern states as a collective were their own country or had some sort of loose economic alliance, they would be essentially a third world country. And I said to myself, I don't think that's accurate, especially if you take a look at some of these states individually. They're economic powerhouses. States like Texas, states like Florida, states like Georgia and Tennessee and North Carolina, these are very powerful economic engines inside the United States. So if they formed a collective of some sort or a loose economic alliance, I tend to believe the South would be very, very powerful indeed. And so I decided to go and take a look for myself. And the first place I went was the United States Bureau of Economic Analysis. That's BEA.gov. And what's cool about this website, and I'll put the link in the description box below, they list United States GDP, gross domestic product, by state. So each state has its own GDP listing. And the data is as of 2022. So it's relatively new and it's very accurate. And from that point, I just took a look at all the states in the South and added together the GDP from each state into the collective. And when I did that, I was amazed at what I discovered. So the first graphic we have here is a simple 11 state combo. I call it the 11 piece. And it's close to what many describe as the Old South, except I've substituted Oklahoma for Virginia. And you see this kind of nice geometric shape in the screen in front of you. Now, this collection of states added together has a GDP of $7.23 trillion. That is a lot of money. That's a very powerful collection of states there. Now, this 11-piece grouping of states is what I consider to be the base model of the South. And when you add up the GDP for all of these states and you group it together, you come out with an impressive number, a $7.23 trillion GDP for this 11-piece grouping of states. Now, what's even more interesting is when you add other states into that mix, the GDP just keeps getting higher. So with the 12 piece that you see in front of you, which is simply just adding the state of Kentucky, that GDP increases to 7.48 trillion. The 13 piece, which is adding both Kentucky and Virginia, boosts the GDP to 8.15 trillion. And finally, the 14 piece, which is adding Kentucky, Virginia, and Missouri to the original 11 states, totals a GDP of $8.55 trillion. And to give you some perspective on how big the economy of that collective South would be, any way you slice it, those southern states, their economy would be the third largest in the world by GDP, right after the United States and China. And amazingly, the southern states, however you configure them, whether that's the 11, 12, 13, or 14 piece variety, all of them as a collective come out in front of both Germany and Japan in terms of economic strength. So no matter how you add up those southern states and which states you sub in or sub out, the South as a collective has the third largest economy by GDP in the world. So we can safely say that if the southern states were their own economic alliance, if they formed some sort of loose economic and government and military alliance, they would easily be the third largest economy in the world. So when it comes to these discussions on social media, a lot of people say, well, the South couldn't do it economically. They'd be total ruins. No, that's totally untrue. The South as a collective would be very strong economically if they were their own entity. Once again, I'll leave the links in the description box below as far as how I got this data, the BEA site. I will absolutely put in the description box so you can go there yourself and check it out. But once again, the South as a collective, if they were their own entity, would be an economic powerhouse. And that is certainly interesting food for thought. This is Kevin in Texas saying God bless you, and I'll talk to you later.